Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the FEBS to EGGS Transition webinar, How to Evaluate Your Bereavement Program. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, NHPCO's Research and Quality Manager, Christy Dudash. Welcome, Christy.
Hello. Can you guys hear me all right? Carla?
Yes, Christy, we hear you just fine.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for attending today. This is all about FEBS and EGGS and what's going on with it, what's changing, and getting you guys prepared for when we make the transition officially. So as Carla said, all of this will be available after the webinar is done. So it might take 1 to 2 days most for everything to post. So if you don't find it, you can email us at egss@nhpco.org or eggs@nhpco.org as we're affectionately calling it. So some things about me. This is me, so you have a face to associate with the name. I've been here at NHPCO for 6.5 years, and my focus is on performance measures and quality improvement and survey research. A couple previous stints in volunteer management with a couple hospices, and it's pretty much been a hospice way of life for me professionally since 2007. What I didn't put up here, in my spare time, I teach yoga and meditation. So if you want to just not do anything for 1.5 minutes, you're welcome to, or if you'd like to participate with me, we're doing in about 1.5 minutes or so centering. And we're just gonna do that now. So find a comfortable seat, perhaps with your back away from the back of your chair, and find a neutral alignment in your spine. Draw your shoulders back and towards each other gently, and place your hands in your lap, one on each leg or one on top of each other. Close off your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, or just lower your gaze. And for now, shift your awareness to your breath. Simply observe it, noticing the inhale when you breathe in and the exhale when you breathe out. Notice the rhythm and the depth of your breathing without really trying to change it in any way. Although by simply bringing your attention to your breath, you might notice the need for a deeper inhale, perhaps, if you've been breathing shallowly. So let's invite a deeper inhale now, holding at the top for a moment. And through the mouth or nose, exhale nice and slow, pausing at the bottom before inhaling again. A couple of deeper inhales and exhales here, and quiet. And hopefully noticing a sense of quiet and calm. Gently open your eyes, welcome yourself back into the room. And if you have room for a good stretch with outstretched arms, go ahead and do that now. And now with renewed focus, we will all shift attention to FEBS and EGGS. Since FEBS has been around for a very long time, thought we'd start with a little centering moment to know that if you're anxious about it, we are here to support you. It's going to go fluidly, and there's so much that's similar about the new survey, and based on your feedback, everything that's changing is going to be hopefully easier for you. So what we'll focus on today are the objectives, so you know the history of the survey that helps evaluate your bereavement services, what's changing with it, and how to implement it in your hospice. So we'll go over all of those things. Beginning with the family evaluation of bereavement services. FEBS was launched in 2007 here at NHPCO, and it was designed for hospices to be able to evaluate the bereavement services with feedback from the recipient of those services. And we went through cognitive and field testing and multiple revisions before it got to the final survey. And it took a comprehensive, or takes, it is currently still in use by some hospices, but is a comprehensive approach by including questions on a wide range of services with skip patterns that allow the respondents to not answer questions that don't pertain to their experience with bereavement services. And this is what the survey kind of title looked like. Hospices can, um, you know, put in their own program name and put in a different photo if they want it. On that Word version of the document is on that left side. And on the right side is the report and how it used to look before 2017, when we created a portal for you, an all-in-one stop and shop. So that is this guy. This is the actual FEBS portal. Once you click on the link from the EGGS page, and in 2017, we created this so that you could enter your surveys by clicking on this guy right here, and it would take you to the actual survey to start inputting data. We also have the view report, so you can view your report in real time. And what it does is reflect your responses that you see or that you have entered, so you can see your responses in almost real time, I should say. Sometimes there is a data refresh. So if you're entering your surveys and then you bounce over to the report, you might not see it reflect right away. And side note, if you don't see an accurate count of your responses after a 24-hour period, feel free to email me so we can help. So this, everything that you see here is going to remain and stay, but it'll be updated for EGGS. So it'll all look and feel exactly the same. It's just the survey entry, and the actual report will look just a little bit different. So the evaluation of grief support services is what we began the process of formally revising the FEBS and changing the name. So that all actually began a little bit prior to 2017, but formally in 2017. So it is now known as EGGS, affectionately. And because there's wide variation in the number and nature of bereavement services offered by hospices, the survey design has changed to a modular one. So while it still takes a comprehensive approach by including questions on a wide range of services, a lot of them now are optional from the hospice's side. So hospices can tailor the survey itself to reflect the specific service that you offer and hone in on those. And we encourage you to utilize this survey and its reports as an integral and value component of your overall QAPI program. So EGGS first steps. And if you're already freaking out about the dates, the date right here, July 16 on the last bullet, is when EGGS goes live, as I've been saying. So some folks, when we first opened the survey for use in the middle of February, some hospices went ahead and started implementing it right away and started to mail it out and started to receive surveys back to the hospice. So what people have been doing is, once they've implemented EGGS and started mailing them out, once you receive the surveys back, you're holding on to them because the portal is currently only accepting the FEBS surveys. So you're going to hold on to those till July 16. And then you'll be able to enter all the surveys for EGGS. So we'll look at an important dates calendar. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense visually. And as I said, the dates varied for when hospices initially began mailing the EGGS surveys and receiving them back. So for that reason, the initial data submission period is extended. So when the initial report for EGGS, it will say February to December 2018, because it's going to encompass all of the surveys that folks have been maybe holding on to since February. And we'll resume 6-month EGGS reports for the January to June 2019 reports. So historically, we present results reflecting a 6-month period. And you can see here, FEBS, the time period for surveys received, which is the surveys that were received back to your hospice. The first half of the year is January 1 to June 30, and the data submission period for entering surveys received back to your hospice during that time is January 16 to July 15. We purposefully have an overlap of 2 weeks after the first half of the year, and moving forward after EGGS starts after the second half of the year. So that allows you to have extra time to enter your surveys after the end of the 6-month period. So again, for FEBS, what you did at the first of the year was to hold on to any surveys received between January 1 and January 15 in order to start entering them in the current data submission period. For EGGS, you're going to hold on to any surveys received from when you first started getting your first ones back all the way up to July 15, and then you'll start entering them online starting July 16. When August 1 pops up, those who have done FEBS, when you go into what will now be known as the EGGS portal, but is the same portal, you'll have a FEBS report available with national comparative data, and that will post August 1. And the survey data entry will be available for EGGS. And then moving forward, the first report for EGGS will be February 1. We'll no longer have any FEBS data entry after July 15. So it'll be all EGGS reports, and this important dates calendar will resume its typical 6-month time period for surveys received. Okay, so kind of rounding everything together into a few basics. EGGS will replace FEBS. So if you haven't already started to implement EGGS into your bereavement services surveys, start now, or you can wait a little bit longer if you want to keep utilizing FEBS. Or if you're new to it, you can start utilizing EGGS whenever you like. FEBS' last day of data entry is the last day of the current data submission period, July 15. And you will have a FEBS January to June report if you've previously done FEBS with national comparative data that will start August 1. Okay, so perhaps before I roll into the actual survey details of what the new survey looks like, Carla, if you don't mind, are there any questions popping up that I need to clarify?
Yes, thank you, Christy. So it looks like there's a question from Caroline that says, where is the EGGS survey found on the website?
Cool, so that's actually where I was going next.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, so, all right. Are there any other questions prior to that?
Nope, that's it. Yep.
Okay.
All righty.
All right, we're on a track. So there are 2 versions of the surveys, and I am going to hopefully be able to share my screen here. Or not share my screen, but I can minimize and show. If you don't mind pausing for a moment, can you guys still see my screen?
Yep, there you go. Looks good.
Okay, all right, cool. So this is the EGGS page, EGSS. If you bookmarked www.nhpco.org/FEBS, it reroutes you to EGGS. So you might want to just re-bookmark it because eventually the /FEBS will be going away. But on this page, the important dates calendar that I had just gone over, and I'll be updating that once we move into a regular time period with data submission. Important to note, if you haven't checked it out, is the EGGS guidelines, which is essentially what we're going over today. And scrolling down under step 1 data collection, there are 3 documents that you need to look at. Right now, the generic survey and the customizable survey are available right here by clicking on them, but only to members. And to access members only resources, you have to be logged in as an individual with your email address that we have in the database for you and your NHPCO password. So if you're having any difficulties with that, you can contact our Solutions Center. So it's solutions@nhpco.org. Solutions, plural, at nhpco.org. All right, so let's pretend that I clicked on that because I already have them open here. And we're going to pull up the customizable version and the generic version. All right. So you can see that yet? I'm not sure of the delay, so I don't want to go too fast. Carla?
Yep, we have the document up right now, the Word document.
Okay, great. So this is the generic version. And what is the difference between generic and customizable? The difference is that if you have a specific unique name to your bereavement program that is different from your hospice name and might lend confusion to the recipients of your bereavement services, and you want to make sure that the folks that are responding aren't going to be confused about maybe answering questions about their hospice services that they might have participated in versus just bereavement services. So we tried to make that clear because we heard back from some hospices that have unique bereavement program names. So I'm going to pull them up side by side, and you can see that for the customizable version, you've got a program name and logo, and then inserted throughout, if you're looking at it side by side, we're allowing you to, in a fashion, edit the survey somewhat with adding in your program's name if it's very different from your hospice name. So that's why there are two versions. Otherwise, the survey is exactly the same question by question. Here's another good section for you to see, the grief support telephone calls. You just kind of are reiterating the name of your program. So that's the actual survey itself and the difference between the two. And if we roll back, to our presentation, and we've got the FEBS portal, which will be changed in names to the EGGS portal. But if you use FEBS, it's the same, and that URL will be changing too. So if you bookmark the FEBS portal, when we change on July 16, you might want to refresh that. If your bookmark doesn't work, it should work. It should just automatically reroute you to the new URL. But the difference in the actual online survey, I don't have a test version for you to take a look at, but the difference in the online survey is that for EGGS is that we will have all the questions on the survey out and no question numbers associated, and that's because of the other portion of the customizability, which is the actual modular components. So we don't know which components you're not using, and since each one has new numbering, you can see grief support groups has a question 1AB, and then other grief support services has questions 1, 2, 3. When you enter in your surveys online, there won't be question numbering. So there's also, same as it was for FEBS, no open-ended questions in the online data entry, and we do recommend that you track those for your own purposes. So if you get any open-ended responses in your surveys, you might want to have somebody transcribe them to an Excel document and keep track of those. Oh, and I'm not showing you this guy. Oh, so, pardon. Going back. All right. So back to the survey itself, there's a how to use EGSS EGGS document. And that document is available without having to log in, and it's available on the EGGS page. And sorry that I keep bouncing back and forth. All right, but this is the document on how to use the elective modules and questions. So there are 3 total um, areas, basically, of modules that and questions that you can choose not to include in your hospice. Um, your hospice might, or your bereavement program in your hospice might offer all of these components, um, or you may offer only some of them. So it depends on what we're looking at, and it's good to have the EGS or the EGGS how-to document and the survey pulled up side by side so you can take a look at it with your program and be able to decide what you use and what you don't. Um, so one would be like grief support groups. More likely, how about other other grief support services? Um, it, and I'm thinking of like camps. So other grief support services, memorial services, or commemorative events, special activities, programs. If you don't offer any of those, then you can remove this entire module here, all of these. So when you get ready to mail out your survey, you would just customize the survey. You can delete and edit those so that you can have it represent the actual services that you provide. So we're not going to go over in too much detail and spend too much time on this. But if you have any particular questions, things that are confusing to you, then we can talk about those offline, or if we have a moment at the end here, we can do that. But if you scroll down on the How to EGGS page, the survey elective modules are shown here too, so you can see all of the ones that are elective. Another is the demographic section. You can choose to include any or all or none of these. So um, if like relationship is a trigger for a lot of respondents, then and you'd rather not include it, or you don't think you find value in it for your evaluation of your bereavement program, then you can take that out. You can take out the age, or you can take out all of it, or leave all of it in. And then there are some questions within a couple modules that you can take out. So the one last thing about the customizability of the survey. We talked about when or how long your hospice provides bereavement services. And typically that's about 13 months. But if, say, yours provides services for 15 months, you can change that question to say 15 months. So that's up a little bit higher. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which question that is, but it is in the survey. And once you see that, you can add and make sure that that's the only question that you can actually tweak the wording of it if you have a different length of time for your bereavement services. All right. So we're going to go to the portal, and the portal is accessible here. And under step 2 data submission, it says enter the portal. When you click on that, it will open a new tab, and you'll have to know your DART ID. So if you don't know that, you can come to us, email eggs@nhpco.org or solutions@nhpco.org, and we'll be able to help you and look up your DART ID and password. In that portal, so I already have it open. Once you're logged in, all of this will change. So it'll say eggs portal, and the important dates are going to remain until January 15. And you can click on enter surveys. That will open up another tab and allow you to enter in surveys. You can click on view report, and you can click on update surveys mailed. All right, so the first question is trying to do this in all the order that people are expecting. For FEBS users, you're looking for the previous period's report. So you can click on the calendar icon at the top. The default data submission period is what's showing here. And when you click on the calendar icon, you can select the previous data submission period, and that was July 16 to January 15. When you click on a different data selection or data submission period, it starts to reload a report. Then you can review it. The National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization does not submit data, so this is the 2017 July to December report, but we didn't enter any responses in. So it's all zeros except the national numbers. And if I decide I want to print out or save a PDF copy, I can click this export button. And depending on your browser, there will be a pop-up or a little, for my Firefox here, it'll show me when that PDF is downloaded. So if we go back, oh, actually, looking at this report, let's, I've got the total surveys return 0. That reflects all the surveys that you entered online. The one on the right, total surveys mailed, reflects what you enter here. So now you can update the number of surveys mailed if you find that you look back at your report for a previous period or the current period and that surveys mailed number is incorrect or needs to be updated. You can change it at any time. You just have to make sure you're in the correct data submission period for that time frame. So I looks like I forgot to enter in my surveys mailed for the previous time period, so I'm going to put in 50 and click save. And it's usually pretty responsive. Yep. So now once I click on view report, it says 50. We do prefer that you make sure you're abiding by these timeframes here for when you are updating the number of surveys mailed, because while it reflects only, it doesn't change anything or mess up any problems with the actual meat of the report, it does affect your response rate, and it reflects the national response rate. So if other people are using the national response rate as some sort of marker to achieve, then we want to all be abiding by the dates so that at least by August 1 and February 1, you have the proper amount of surveys mailed for that time period entered in. So we can go back to the current data submission period and click on view report, and I just want to show you that it changes. So this is the important thing to see, to know that you're in whatever time period you want to look at a report for, is that header right there. So that in a nutshell is our portal. And does anybody have any questions on that right now before I go into often asked questions?
I have, will there be a no answer response when entering the questionnaire?
Yes, actually, great question, because what there will be is a no answer response option, and there will also be, for the elective questions or questions that are included in an elective module, there will be another response option that says something akin to, we don't use this one in our survey. So that we'll be able to differentiate those, and those will be reflected in your report properly. Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all the questions I have right now.
Okay, cool. So now let's go to what I have found are often asked questions. And these are mostly in response to survey data entry or the actual survey itself. So respondent numbers, do they reset after a data submission period? Or some sort of question on respondent numbers. So some of you might even be asking what a respondent number is. And what you would do is make a unique number for each survey that has been received back to your hospice. and write that down on your hard copy. So let's say you receive back 5 surveys, you're going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say, as an example. And when you enter them online, you would enter in what we call a respondent number and enter in your surveys numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that way you know, and hopefully you have some sort of system like putting a check mark next to your hard copy survey once you've entered it online, or whatever it is, kind of process that you go through to make sure you've tracked that properly. So the number or that you choose is unique, and it's unique to you. It's however it is that's meaningful to you. So some folks, I think, use numbers and letters. Some folks use a long date. So the system will allow you to enter in whatever respondent number you want, but we do recommend strongly a unique respondent number per survey. And we request that you don't duplicate respondent numbers, because sometimes in your overzealousness for entering in survey data, you might enter in a survey twice. And this happened recently, so I was able to look at which surveys were entered in twice, and I pulled the raw data for a hospice, and I saw that there was 6 surveys, and number 6 was entered twice. Or started to enter twice. I can see every single response you put in. So if it goes to a certain point and I see that one survey wasn't completed, or if I see the exact survey responses entered in twice for each, and you're also guiding me because you know that number 6 was entered in twice, then you can tell me to delete it. I don't delete anything unless you tell me to. So the only caveat to that is that we work with a survey software vendor, so it does take time to make those changes reflect properly in your report. So take your time when you're entering in data, take breaks, because it's taxing, draining, repetitive, and yeah, so it takes some self-care when you're entering in survey data. Your eyes can get very blurry very fast. The next often asked question is, how do I fix my number of surveys mailed, which we just went over, but the number of surveys mailed is used to calculate the response rate for your hospice based on the number of surveys that were received back to your hospice. And ideally, that number would be updated on an ongoing basis. So maybe you enter in surveys every month, or maybe you enter in surveys every 3 months, or by golly, every day. But when you log into the EGGS portal, you'll click on the Update Surveys Mailed. And for the particular data submission period that you need to update for, you would update that number there. Your report refreshes automatically with the updated response rate. And that's a screenshot of what that would look like, which we just covered, but just making sure you see that again. And then actually going back to that real quick, little side story. A few years ago, we noticed that the national response rate was very different, very, very low. And we couldn't figure it out. So we pulled up all the raw data, and we found one hospice that for the past few data submission periods, he didn't know the number of surveys mailed during the time period. So he just put in a bunch of ones. So we called him and educated him on the importance of the calculation, and that it does affect the national response rate. So he stopped doing that, and it was a long time ago. But if you don't know your survey's mailed number and no clue at all, just leave it blank, because otherwise know that it affects the national response rate and that people are looking at it as a marker. And the last question that has been often asked over time, especially since 2014, is EGGS required? I mentioned 2014 because that's when the hospice CAP survey came out, and that's when we stopped collecting data for FEC if you used that, the Family Evaluation of Hospice Care. FEBS/EGGS is completely separate from CAPS. And it's not that hospice CAPS is missing bereavement, but rather it is focused on hospice care to the patient and primary caregiver, and not focused on bereavement services provided to caregivers in the community, or at least not yet. So for now, as far as federal requirement, is not required, and data submission and reporting for our measure, along with all of our measures, are voluntary and available to you as an NHPCO member at no additional cost. Oh yeah, and then the very last often asked question I threw in yesterday: can I change the survey, delete or edit the wording? Aside from the length of services that you offer to an individual, you can edit that to say if it's 15 months instead of 13 months. The same guidelines apply to eggs as they do for FEBS, so that the survey should be used in exactly the same form as it is presented. So only questions labeled as optional may be deleted. The order of the questions within a page should not be changed, and the wording of the question should not be changed. But if you choose to not include one more optional, oh, I said one more, but it's one or more optional module or question, you just delete that one that doesn't apply. But you can't edit the actual, we recommend that you don't edit the actual survey question itself. And with that, we'll go into a Q&A, so cover any other questions you guys might have in our last minutes.
So I think we might have covered some of these questions, but I just want to re-bring them to the surface just to make sure that they're clarified, I guess. So it looks like Hospice of Hope is asking, is there a third-party vendor that will compile data, send surveys, et cetera?
Right now we work with one. So there are some hospices that utilize that vendor, and they send out the survey for you, receive it back, and then they send me a raw data file of that. And then once that's done, you would still log into the portal to receive your report on August 1 and February 1. So that vendor is SHP. We don't have any other contracts with anybody else to do that, and I'm not sure if we would, but if you have a vendor that you're talking to and are interested, we'd like to communicate with them, because it is a process of sending or having communications with that vendor so that they know how to set things up. So we'd have to set up a contract with them.
Okay. We have a question from Deb that asks, to clarify, regarding respondents' numbers, we don't duplicate for each 6-month period, but can start back at 1 again for the next 6-month period, right?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
If that works for you, to go back over, like we go from 1 to however many, 1 to 150 in the first 6 months, and we go from 1 to 200 in the next 6 months. Yeah, whatever you like to do. So it's like I said, it's unique to you and whatever's meaningful for you as your hospice.
Okay, we have a question from Joshua that asks, could you clarify the 1 to 3 month guideline you presented?
There's not really much more to clarify, except that it's up to the hospice with your bereavement services. So after, oh no, you know what? I did say 1 to 3 months after the death, but it's 1 to 3 months after. Good catch. 1 to 3 months after the services have ended. So it's if we pull up actually the EGSS guidelines, that will probably be more helpful to you. The guidelines, as I said, are available on our web page, EGSS page, and you don't have to log in as an individual member with this. Okay, so here we go. So it's I'm so sorry that I said 1 to 3 months. This we used to do it with FEC. It's 1 to 3 months after the death, and I was thinking of CAPS, which is 1 to 3 months after the death. So please disregard that. It is 14th month, so one month or so after the last month. So if you here we go. If you mail, or if you have services that run for 15 months, then you might want to mail it in the 16th month. So some folks do it. It's still maintain that 1 to 3 months after services because it's similar to 1 to 3 months after the death because they just went through all these services. And while you kind of want to get their feedback while they're still fresh from the services, you also want to maintain that boundary and give them a little bit of time to just be. So this is why we recommend that, but it's not like a hard guideline because individual hospice programs, do their own thing. So if you find that it's easier, we even had a hospice say that they mailed out and found that they had an increased response rate when they started mailing out their bereavement survey 2 weeks after the last service had ended. So the length of their service had ended. So it's up to you, but it is, we typically say 14-month time period or whenever 1 month or so after your last services have been provided.
Thank you, Christy. And then we have a question from Ellen that asks, our last FEBS data submission was in February as we began using EGSS surveys at that time. Since the FEBS report that is available in August is for data submission period January through June, we would only have submitted data in January and February. Should we ignore that report and just wait for the January 2019 EGSS report?
No, you should still retrieve your FEBS report because it will have that 1 month's worth of responses and it'll be specific to FEBS. So, I mean, depending on how many you sent out or that you entered online, if it's like 3 or 4 surveys, you might not find it to be very meaningful. But otherwise, I would recommend, going in there. And it will be in there for you. So if you decide at a later point you want it, it's still going to be there because we post, we keep in the portal the last 2 or 3 data submission periods reports.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Caroline that says, we offer community grief support. Can we also mail out to community members who participated in grief support groups? And then there's a clarification, community members who were not connected to hospice.
Yes, because the survey itself is specific to the bereavement services that you offer, it is very separate from hospice. So and there's an actual section on support groups. So you will want to include that module. Make sure you don't, take it out because that will be very helpful for the ones that participated in those support groups. And then, of course, the survey itself is once you mail it out, however much you've customized it, people will respond to what they want to. So it might come back pretty empty, except for that part that has to do with support groups.
Well, awesome. We've addressed all the questions that came through so far, either in the chat box or the Q&A. So if anybody has any other questions, we're free to take them. So I'm not seeing anything else coming in as of yet, Christy, so I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to cover or bring up.
Nope, that's all. So if you do find you have any other questions, you can always email eggs@nhpco.org and or post on my NHPCO if that's easier. And we'll have all of our resources available for you on the EGGS page and in my NHPCO.
All right, well, perfect, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for going over this very important webinar about FEBS to EGGS transition. Like Christy said, we'll have this posted and ready for you guys so that you can get your learn how to evaluate your bereavement program. So Thank you all so much for joining us today. Take
Thank you,
care.
Carla.
Sure, you're welcome. No problem. Thank you. Goodbye, all. Bye-bye.